by the Temple of Solomon and the lamp of illumination, the bloodline of the Christs and the shining star of David, may the spirit of Hiram Abiff, the architects and the sages, be the guiding hand of victory and the wisdom of the ages.
You sounded like Dirty Harry just then.
You are listening to The Richard Smith Show. Newsflash. UFO Magazine to publish John Ford issue. Dear friends and associates, here's something I want you to pay attention to here. We've reached a major turning point in the John Ford Initiative. And I sent this announcement out not too long ago, I think it was on June 22nd, to everybody concerned, because I had received word from Bill and Nancy Burns that they are making the next issue of UFO Magazine a wall-to-wall John Ford issue. This is a chance for you to write an article for the magazine. I have already confirmed this with Alfred Lemberg and have recently discussed it with John Ford as well. John, just to say the least, is ecstatic and speechless. He has no words to describe his tremendous gratitude towards Bill and Nancy for engaging in a project like this with UFO Magazine. Alfred himself has told me that the deadline for getting an article into the magazine for consideration and publication would be 2 weeks. Now that's 2 weeks from June 22nd, and today is June 28th. Okay, so I suggest you guys get on the ball and start going after this. Don't leave it until the last minute. You know, there's a lot involved with banging out a magazine publication, and Bill and Nancy put a lot into this with regard to the fact that there's both a printed and an online version of the magazine. I've already spoken with Peter Moon and Jerry Samisi, and they're on board with this as well. John Ford has already begun writing his article, and as far as submission guidelines, here's what you need. Article submissions should be submitted within 2 weeks in electronic format by email, and they should be emailed directly to Alfred Lemberg, and his email is alienview@roadrunner.com. That's alienview, all one word, ALIENVIEW at roadrunner.com, ROADRUNNER.com. Make sure that you include in the email subject line that it's UFO Magazine John Ford issue. Just say it like that, UFO Magazine John Ford issue in the subject line, so you know people can keep track of what the hell you're emailing in the first place. In the meantime, though, once again, for all of you out there who's been supporting this, I want to thank you for your time, interest, and support on this. It is much appreciated, and we look forward to getting those articles into UFO Magazine ASAP. I have already begun writing mine as well. So, and of course, you know how to find the John Ford Initiative online. Just go to ufoteacher.com/John Ford. That's ufoteacher.com/John Ford. And get on board. We need those donations. There's a reason why I keep asking for it, because we do need it. I've already explained that in the past why. Legal fees and whatnot, and the whole gamut of bullshit that goes into getting someone out of incarceration when they've been illegally and illegitimately charged. So just go to ufoteacher.com/John Ford and get those donations in, and please click on the link for the petition and sign the petition as well. All right, thank you very much. Now, folks, on this show here, this episode of the Richard Smith Show, we have a very special guest here coming up. You all know him, you all love him. His name is Dr. Delbert Blair. Okay, if you haven't heard of him at least once, then maybe you've been living in a cave for the last 10 years. I don't know. But he is a master metaphysician, lecturer, and free thinker. One of his favorite quotes is by Nikola Tesla. If you wish to understand the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration. That basically sums up the direction that this particular discussion and interview is going in. And you know what? I've got the announcement on my WordPress blog as well. You can find it there. You can find it blasted all over the place: Facebook, Google+, Twitter, Blogger. Okay, it's the information about him I spread all over the place, and I'll be doing the same with this podcast upload as well. But as far as Dr. Delbert Blair, we had an amazing discussion, and whether it be magnetic solutions to electronic disease, cells from hell, energy vampires, silent killers, current world events, historical perspective, monoatomic gold, your health and wellness, diodes, pyramid power, or the cosmos itself, Dr. Blair is a tremendous proponent of the metaphysical side of things. Among the many topics that we are going to talk about here in this episode, Dr. Blair will speak on what the Great Pyramid really is and discuss the unbelievable world events and things that you and your loved ones can, must, and should do physically, metaphysically, and spiritually now. So, without any further time here wasted, we're going to just jump right into the interview here. And I hope you guys enjoy it, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on it. All right. Have a great day. How are you doing there?
Okay, doing fine.
All right, wonderful. Hey, Dr. Blair, it's wonderful to have you on the Richard Smith Show. Thank you for coming on. We've been looking forward to talking with you for quite a while here. And I have been spreading your information all around the internet, letting people know about it. And I recently watched a very profound video that I found on YouTube about you there, one of several. And I thought it was just amazing what you were talking about there through the history of the pyramids and the different types of pyramids. And I know you cover a lot of bases there, but I guess the best place to start off here is just give the audience a little bit of your background, who you are, how you got involved with the things that you're interested in. How did that come about?
Okay, well, that's taking it back a little bit because I'm an old man, and in a young man's body, and that came through having to get into nutrition. I've gone through a lot of changes, been in car accidents, poisoned, and so on and so forth again. Overall, my studies were as a college history professor, believe it or not, and I taught there in a couple of colleges for a while, but my whole life changed, to make it summation and get directly to the core and the point, in 1960. And in 1960, I went to a lecture in downtown Chicago, we're Chicago-based, by a man by the name of George Adamski. And it turned out that I spent some time with him. He didn't know me from Adam or anything else. I barged into a press conference he was having by accident, and we wound up talking on a mezzanine of a hotel for almost 4 hours. I had never met the man before. I just told him I was impressed by his books and so on and so forth. But it turned out I was also, I was still in school at this time, and had very little money because I was on a fellowship, and it didn't pay off but 2 times a year. So long story short, I met him on a Friday. He was speaking on a Saturday, and I did not know it was a weekend conference. So he invited me back after having spent some 4 hours with me the night before. To make a long story short, I came back. Because of having spent so much time with before, I was with an audience, and the audience at the end of it, by the way, I'm going to get into this, I am black, per se, and I say that because at the conference there were only 2 other black people there. There were 347, because there's 350 white people there. So at the end of it, having spent some time with it, I went over to talk with these 2 guys who were black simply because I thought they may live in my neighborhood or something. Well, it turned out that they wound up doing things with me and for me that I never had done in my life and haven't since. But to make a very long story short, I lost some time, only about 15 minutes, however. They read my mind, and they did it so smoothly that I didn't even realize my mind was being read. I thought I was speaking to them until I was beginning to weigh my thoughts, because I thought some things might be trite and ignorant to ask, and so they answered the trite things and so on and so forth. And they performed about 5 days later, came over the house where I was staying, it was at University of Chicago Quads, and with 3 UFOs performed for me for 45 minutes. Well, when you have that happen, and I'm not an abductee, by the way, I don't claim that, I am a contactee, that changes your life. And I'm still not able to do what they were able to do there, which lets me know someplace there's some education going on that I wasn't exposed to. So that changed my mind. That changed my life. It also changed my mind and direction. From that point, I was going into the ministry, and then once I got into that, it was another one of my side studies, if you would. I had to let all of it go, because having seen that, having been exposed to that, you're never the same. At least I wasn't. And from that time on, I've been searching for truth. It opened up the whole gamut of things, because then I realized that what I had been taught was juvenile, that there were heavier things being taught, that there was a reason for races on this planet. There's a reason for the history of this planet, which, by the way, I was told, and it seems to be true, is 40 and 50 years later, that this planet is 4.6 billion years old. So when we're talking about history, we don't even know what we're talking about. His story is what we're really talking about. And that also, that for 3.6 of those years, 3.9 of those billion years, it's been controlled by a race of people called Dracons. So with that in mind, I think that pretty much blows the keg off of everything, and I can only go upward or downward from that point on. Because of that, I've tried to increase psychic ability. Because of that, I've studied voraciously. I have a library of close to about 890 books. I've read about 750 of them, and then some of them I read so voraciously that I had to get them again, second edition, because the first editions were all torn up. I've been through a bunch of things. I've been poisoned. I've been shot at. I don't know what else to say. So with that in mind, what I do now is, because my wife was also poisoned and killed by the poisoning, and that was in a lecture down in Dallas, Texas. Isn't that interesting, too? So,
yes.
So recently, my son died. That was about, not quite a month yet, so I had to go through that one. But in rationalizing why these things happen, and in rationalizing what time we're in, and because of metaphysics, I'm able to live with that, because I believe in reincarnation. I believe that there is a thing that we're all set to do here, and to figure the faster we can find out what it is and stick with it, the more things open up for us, and that's about it. So I think that should be enough to open up the doors for just about any other thing.
Yes, definitely, and thank you for that. And you know what, I'm so sorry to hear about, your wife and your son there. That's unfortunate, but yes, I believe in reincarnation myself too. Well, I know you're into a lot of different things. You brought up monoatomic gold before. What got you interested in that, and what is it that you do with it?
Well, I've been led, more or less, I think now, every time I follow what they call your first mind, people snap their fingers and say, if I just followed my first mind. Well, I learned to follow my first mind. When things don't make sense and I go within and ask questions and the answers are given, I go by them. So I guess the whole point is, I've met several people now. I've been with the Monatomic Gold Company now, and Pat Bailey's, I don't know if you probably know a lot, so you probably heard about William Hudson and all. Well, this was a person who carried on without getting into the pitfalls that Hudson got into. So I've been with his company. It's without giving them a plug, it's a gold company, which I trust. So I've been with them now, I guess, about 27 years. I've dealt with a company that makes diodes, and because that's another long story. These people all either are contactees or have had someone very close to them to be that. That's why they got into these fields. So now the diodes are protection against the radiation, not just the electromagnetic propagations that are, of course, with anyone who's on this planet. You have an energy field. If you have a soul, you have an energy field. But these are things to block the bad rays, and that's what they call the ELF rays, electromagnetic field propagations from low frequencies. And that's really with everything that you can think of. That's just about everything we're using, including the so-called smartphones, cell phones, laptops, standard computers, again, if you would, high-tension power lines, motors, wireless routers, microwave oven. That's another thing. Anybody eating microwave oven food does not understand that Klystron tube is in there and what it can do, because when you eat the food and it's hot, you're eating raw radiation. When it's cool, we don't use it. And of course, the MP3 players, video game stations, automobiles, that's another thing too. When we drive automobiles, whether it's a 18 or 32 wheeler, and I didn't even know they had 32 wheelers, but I've seen that too, or if it's just a regular car, every time you turn on the ignition, you're going to kick in that alternator. The alternator is going to set up a frequency. With the cost of gasoline, you're not going to sit in one place and listen to that radio. You're going to move. When the wheels turn, there's no ground, and all that energy is thrown into the chassis or into the solid weld objects, and of course the seats are solid weld to the chassis. So that means now that people are getting radiated. Women are getting radiated when they sit on there. It's working on the sciatic nerve, and it even can cause uterine fibroids. The men are getting prostate trouble and swelling, and also restless leg syndrome because of, again, of the sciatic problems. So you sit on one of those diode mattresses, or a diode pad, and it stops all of that. There's a diode that you can use for food. When you buy your groceries, in fact, you can sit that on a diode plaque. It's only 9 by 12. And every kind of radiation and poison is nullified once you sit it on there for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. To me, every kitchen should have it. Every restaurant should have it. But they don't, especially now with the genetic modification of these foods. And they've even found now, and I know you know about this, even human DNA, horse DNA, you name it, they got it in there. And we're eating it and thinking we're very smart. So the third product I got into was the Miracle series, and that's another person I met. He was a minister. And they, in fact, it's the Browner brothers, they put on what they would call a hair fair every year. And they're noted as ministers, but they also do that. One of them, however, is very spiritual. Guess who got to meet him? And so with that one, he puts out a product called Miracles, the Miracle series. And that's Monatomic, got that Monatomic going on in my mind. It's Miracle 2000 and Heart Miracle. The Miracle 2000 has 35 things in it to help you. People talk about one a day. Back in my day, they had one a day. Well, this is one a day on 5,000 steroids. This thing will give you, to start your day, quick energy. It will give you your basic amino acids, vitamins, minerals, things like this. And it's ionic, meaning by that it's more readily absorbed than just something that's a liquid. Just like monatomic is more readily absorbed than something called ionic. So that's another thing they take. And then anybody with cholesterol problems, diabetes, things along this line, needs a Heart Miracle. It has 49 different things in it for your cholesterol, for hypertension, for things along that line. So that's another product. And as I say, I meet these people who are more or less, I suppose, percent, and that's it. And then I even got heavily into magnetics and magnetism. And that's another young lady who my wife, when I met her, was very much into the magnetic propensities. She led me into that, and so I've been dealing with that company. So all these companies that I deal with have been up to almost close to 30 years, none less than 25 years, and we're still now finding that the things we're doing and offering can help many people. So I don't manufacture them myself. The only thing I manufacture are my tapes, but I am very close with them. We do talk. We do understand what time we're in, and the time I think we're in, and most of them agree, is that we're in a time on our planet Earth, which has had many names too, and I know you know about that, and I can go into that history if necessary. We're on a time now that we're going from kindergarten to graduate school. And I say that's my definition. We're going from the third dimension and propensities and things that are offered on that dimension all the way up to the fifth dimension, which we're not quite into. Some are because they're ahead of the game, but most of us are not. We're not that advanced yet. But we are getting deeply into the fourth dimension, which gives a reason for some of the things that are happening weather-wise, some of the things that are happening psychic-wise, some of the things that are happening with the new usage for pyramids and how they work, the crop circles. Also, all these things are letting us know that we're getting to a point now where our planet is no longer going to be controlled by draconic individuals, nor the Illuminati that serve them, and it's a time for people to wake up. With that in mind, we're going to find many things happening with people now, people stopping on green lights, walking off the edge of a pier, texting, all of these things, because their attentions are being divided when their attention should now be concentrated toward the betterment of mind, body, spirit, and soul. So that's another overview, and you have to tell me where I should try to go from there.
Oh yeah, definitely, and that's fantastic. I'm curious to know, compared to modern times and I should say the rediscovery of things like diodes and magnetic solutions and monoatomic gold, do these things work the same way with us today as they did with the ancients, or is it a different experience altogether?
I think the experience is on the vibrational rate by which we garner or go through the experience. The Creator never has to lie. Creation never lies. It's just that the scientists and those are limited, and because they're limited, they try to limit everyone else. There is no end to creation. And doing the little bit of study that I have and so on, I've been into astral projection. I'm not a master astral projectionist, by the way, but I've experienced that too. I've experienced most of these things, scared the heck out of me at one time too. But I think it's where we find ourselves in vibrational rate. Everybody's a reincarnate here. And when you reincarnate, where you reincarnate, how you reincarnate, and the experiences that you're exposed to are supposed to be for your progress. If we don't learn from progression, we repeat it. If we do learn, and it seems like in this time, either I took a long time to reincarnate this time, or I'm meeting people who are what they call star seeds, walk-ins, and old souls. And these are the kind of things I feel now that we're going to experience simply because it's a time for us to, on this planet, well, as I state, I believe, and it's all I can do, we all have our belief systems, that this planet is very old, that this planet is going to a time now where she's going to stop so much reincarnating of low vibrating souls and will strictly be into the fifth dimension herself. That being the case, everything that I utilize is toward that end, to let our souls, our cells, and our bodies and minds resonate at higher vibrational rates. Doing so, of course, then we understand the dream state. People say they don't dream. They dream, they just don't remember their dreams. People say that there's no such thing as astral projection. There definitely is, and we do so every night. But it's just, again, the projection is complete when you sense it or know it. It's remote viewing otherwise, or it's what they would call just what they call, another name perhaps it is now. But at any rate, it means that we are spirits inside of a body experiencing physical consciousness for learning, not a complete body inside of a spirit. We are spirits, and we're here to learn, and the quicker we learn, the better off, and the quicker we get on the path that we were soughting or seeking, the better we can be sought after, the better we can fulfill our deeds, and giving is better than receiving if you have something to give, because as you give, you shall receive, and I think I remember reading that somewhere. So I simply think it's a time on this planet now when the miraculous is happening. I'm doing a teleconferencing tomorrow on just that, the miraculous things that are happening. We look at these wars and rumors of wars. We hear about these earthquakes in diverse places. We see about flowers blooming out of season. We see animals and species not bearing their young. We see almost so many prophecies that are being fulfilled, whether you're looking at the Popol Vuh, whether you're looking at the Bhagavad Gita as it is, whether you're looking at the Christian Bible, whether you're looking at the El Quran, many things are being fulfilled. This weather, where I am now, I've never seen, you talk about 40 days and 40 nights, we have had 39 days of weather that has been inclement. It's been inclement. We've had microwave bursts here in the Midwest. Who ever heard of tornadoes and microwave bursts in Illinois and Indiana? It just doesn't happen.
Oh, yeah.
But it is happening. We hear about chemtrails. We hear about that they don't exist. They most definitely exist. We've got pictures of them. And as you know, up on the Internet, you can see all kinds of these trails. These are man-made. Or shall we say these are Illuminati-made. There's a battle going on. And the battle to me is for the consciousness of the soul and those who are ready to go forth to higher dimensions and higher learning, and those who want to stay back in this jungle of war and hatred and hell, of fighting races and everything else. And I think those who choose one path, they'll get aided. Those who don't choose another path, they'll get aided, but by the wrong ones. So this is, again, I think, a time of great settlement and a time of an awakening which is much needed.
Yes, I agree too. And you know what? Just for people who are listening to the show, all you got to do is come to where I live in Albuquerque. We've got chemtrails in the sky every day of the week. And, you know, it's interesting you should bring that up because my wife Diane and I had an interesting experience a few months ago. It's about maybe, 8 months ago. We were looking up in the sky, and we actually, we actually saw the beginning formation of a chemtrail, and I started looking closer at the beginning of that trail to see what was leading it, and it turned out to be a black triangular craft. Perfect triangle, black, dark, and here was the funny, as if that wasn't mysterious enough, here's where it got real weird. Both my wife and I are looking right at the new chemtrail being formed in the sky, and I pointed at the dark triangular craft, and I said, look, that's what's making it. Look at it. It's right, and it was coming right at us, right over us. And she's looking in the same spot I am, and there wasn't anything else getting in the way. You couldn't miss it. And the fact of the matter is, she could not see it. And it was a profound moment. We're both looking at the same chemtrail, but she could not see the craft, but I could. And that was just an outstanding. And I looked at her. I did a double take. I was like, how can you not see it? It's as black as pitch. It's right there in the sky. So it was truly astounding. But I'm glad you brought that up there too, because in terms of current world events, I was looking a lot at what you've been talking about with past lectures, seminars, and presentations, and in relation to all the weirdness going on in the current world events, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit or a lot about the things possibly working against us, such as what you refer to, I think, as electronic diseases, cells from hell, energy vampires, and silent killers.
Those are some of my lecture topics. By the way, this is not braggadocious. It's just that I've been around and I've been prolific in my undertakings, not in book writing, but in lecture giving. And I have over 104 different subjects that I speak to, believe that or not. And it is true. Some of them overlap. In fact, everything overlaps once you understand the sequencing and what's happening on our planet. But this is the whole point. There was a movie, A Few Good Men, and I think it was questioning, this lawyer was questioning this top general or something like this. He said, you can't handle the truth?
Yes.
They can't handle the truth. They say they want the truth. They don't want the truth. They want something to fit their parameters without having to expand consciousness. They're very uncomfortable. Those that are comfortable know they can feel the resonance within them that this is a time of change. They can see that there are sides that must be chosen now. They can choose an advanced site. They can choose a static site. They can choose a backward site. Everything now is what you choose it to be. And once you understand this again, then these products that I talk about can help you to achieve this. Going into meditation. I was taught prayer. Believe this or not, I would say I was on my way. I shouldn't even say that. I am a full-fledged Baptist minister. I do not practice Christianity at this time. I'm not a hypocrite. I was studying this because I wanted to get in spiritual service, and this is all that I knew. But then when I understood that there's so much more, and that the allegories found in many of these holy books are simply things that are done for the people who are not progressed enough to take the truth, so they break it down like childlike allegories and things. So once that is understood, then I would say that these chemtrails, I have seen, in fact, you can go up to not just my website, any website, you can see these chemtrails, circles, X's, crosses, and some of them I've seen the black triangles. Those are usually this government made, especially the smaller black triangles, because they got some as big as football fields. But what was normally making them before, these were white type planes. In fact, when they first started out about 20 years ago, they traced them back to Vandenberg Air Force Base. Then they traced some others that came from other places. Well, keep this in mind now. These daggone chemtrails are all over our planet, which now that we have drones, that makes more sense. But before we had drones, and drones is a new item. Drones has been around now for about a year and a half for those who are advanced, but only in the past 8 months do people understand drones. And I tell people that's just the beginning of that. Next year, they'll be talking about alto and pico, rather than just talking about nano. They'll be talking about subatomic particles and things like this, although they're all made on the wrong scale. Long story short, I think that our planet is going through a metamorphosis into higher dimensions. I think we now have the privilege as souls of going to that higher dimension, if we can take it, to stay with the same dimension here if we don't want to progress, or to ride the gap in between for about another year. The danger with riding the gap is that you lose your higher protection. And I believe that the higher grades of this planet are those that will be vibrating into the fifth dimension and already are in the fourth dimension, which seemingly are mortal enemies. This is where they exist. This is why these Dracon and Draconic individuals and these Illuminati that serve them, they work through the fourth dimension, because this is the dimension they're stuck on. They can lower their vibes, but they can't raise their vibes. So consequently, what we're seeing now are those trying to hold back the progress of a planet, those trying to get dumbed down, comatose, brainwashed, inoculated, vaccinated, and encrypted people to be the rule. This is why they give hepatitis C shots the third day in a hospital when your baby is born. And when does a newborn baby need hepatitis C of any type? This is when they start putting chips and things into people, and they put it into these children there. They give them 7 shots by the time they get out of these blank-to-blank hospitals. And by that time, they'll become TI, technically invaded. As I state, this to me is a time for those who are awake. They will see what they're supposed to see. For those who are asleep, they will see what they're supposed to see. For those who spend sleeping and waking time in progress, they will see some of the things some of the time. It's a matter of what you want. It's a matter of what you desire, and it's a matter of what you're willing to accept when shown to you. So I think we all get what we deserve. Sometimes I think we need mercy, not justice. And I think in many cases that may be our privilege or our curse, one of the two.
Well, the people that are willingly engaging in this activity, though, see, this is where I tend to have a problem, because, and definitely give your feedback on this. I mean, you have these people who have willingly sold their soul to the devil for a piece of the action, or willingly partaking in these projects, and now, like in this, and I'm sure you've heard of it, this disclosure movement, which aggravates the hell out of me, because all it's doing is giving immunity to a bunch of jackbooted thugs who should be hunted down like animals and shot dead for what they've done to the human race. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think the sides are drawn. You know, one of the things I study natural selection, and I also study, how to get rid of insects and things and these nuisances. And one of the things that's very interesting, if you have ants and you have a plate of food, it could be honey and everything else they want, and you put that on the floor, on the ground in place else, and you draw a chalk circle around it, those ants will not cross that chalk circle. There's something about the chalk that it's not abrased that will stop them. Everybody has a pitch, has an anti and a pro. They talk about antibiotics. There are such things as probiotics. Why would I want anything that's anti-something unless it's anti-bad things itself? So think as you think, that there are souls here that are old souls. In fact, they have whole families of these incarnates that are part reptilian. And this is true. I believe it. To my soul, I believe it. They worship them. They honor them. And they honor them for the worldly good and fashions, because they've lived off the entrails and fluids and harmonics of other people. And this is how they stay alive. So if this is what you think you want, and you're ready to reincarnate and to live constantly like that, that's fine. But the whole point is now, they're not going to be able to do that on this planet over another 2 years. This, is, I've been told, is a year of death. Billions of people will die. Billions of people die all the time anyway. But these are billions of people that need not necessarily die. They're going to die for the lack of understanding and knowledge. Next year, it's half and half. You have people moving objects, showing great psychic power. Animals will begin to obey them, and so. The year after, we're free. It's getting through, if we can, all of this time when chaos is going to reign. And so, yes, I believe as you are. And why do they do that? For worldly goods. You sell your soul to the devil for mortal things that you can get. You sell yourself to the devil to be able to live off of other people's entrails and hormones and stuff like this, such as people, I will not name some, but many people, a couple of these people we don't know are about 250 years old, living off the hormones of other people. But what do you gain? You gain the ability to stay maybe with 2 solar systems in which supposedly the Dracons rule, and do everything that they can. You get every virtue that you would call virtue on earth, and long life on earth. But to me, why would I choose to get everything that earth has to give and use the opportunity of maybe going to a trillion other planets to see what that life form is worth. To me, it's not worth it. For them, it is, and for the sake of mortality, they don't give a blank what they do, and they simply do it. They do unto others, not like they want them to do unto them, but to live off of them like the serpents have taught them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's that's an interesting point you bring up, though. So, with overall with what you're saying, you see a great sea change in the next couple of years.
Oh yes, the changes. We're going through changes now. It's selective. The people after the Star Wars, of course, trilogies and stuff that went on for thing, and then you had, of course, the Star Trek and all this kind of things again. What we're seeing now is a fulfillment of things that can be done. Many people now, they're being made to lose weight, they're being made to trim up, they're being made to get into vegetarianism, they're being made to get into juices and the things that are from them, they're being told to get rid of the white sugar products and to get rid of just the meat products. It's because of the vibrational rates. The higher vibrations in some of these ships that I've been told again, if the people would have to be beamed aboard, and some of them will not land because it would cause almost an earthquake for them to take off again, so they will beam you. Well, if they put a beam on most people now, the highest courses, the people would disintegrate because they're full of parasites. They cannot take the higher vibrations. So by going to the lower vibrations, you're actually cutting off a higher vibrational angel, or what you would want to call a higher source. So again, it's more reasons for us to try to clean up our act. We're all being told to clean up our act. We all know it's in it. You got exercise programs and everything else. And yet people, because of the pharmaceutical industry, because of the drugs that warp your hormones and stop you from following the pituitary and the higher glands and organs, so they're doing the very things that's going to stop them from graduating, to stop them from elevating. Yet within, they know they can't. I mean, they know that they should be changing. And this is why, again, we have a lot of cleaners that I have used. I threw away all my cleaners, and I deal with one now. It's called the cleaner for men and cleaner for women. It will clean out 5 of your basic organs. It will kill parasites, and hear this, it will also kill parasitic eggs. And this is the hardest thing to do. Many people that are going through muscle cramp and joint cramps, they're being eaten up by parasites. They're eating away their joints. They're fusing them. They're losing MSM and glucosamine and everything else because this is where they're breeding. And then when they breed enough, they create an enzyme to make you eat what they want so you're nothing but a host. I don't like to consider myself a host, and I think we should do everything we can to raise our vibrations, and that's why selectivity of what you eat, drink, and think, and mainly it's what you think, because that prompts you to what you eat and drink, is what we all should be doing.
Interesting. I myself have a huge proponent of juicing with fruits and vegetables. Do you ascribe to that too, or do you prefer something different?
No, I juice daily. Almost the only time I juice, after a while, unless somebody prepares, sometimes I get tired. And yesterday's juice, or sometimes I'll skip it. But anytime given the opportunity, I drink juices. Or I get products that are close to the juices that I would normally drink if I just don't feel like juicing them, or if I can get time to put on a diode pad to remove the poisons and toxins from them. I'm very much a proponent of carrots and carrot juice. There are many people that don't believe in that. They say it's a hybrid. I don't care what they say. I've seen what it can do. I love my Life Source Super Sprouts, which has chlorella, spirulina, barley grass, wheatgrass. It brings it the best from the oceans and the land. And then when you combine that with Monatomic Gold and Miracle 2000 and things like this, your body will begin to heal itself. Your body will begin to often build your immune system sky high. In addition to that, as I say, I'm on the cutting edge of some new products that are now open to people, such as Carnivora, such as BioStem, such as there's another one that has shiitake, maitake, and reishi munrum, which we call Immune Superb. All of these things can only help people. And if you can understand this, then you can begin to repel the evil things that are in you, the diseases and bacterium that are in you. And also, as you do that, of course, you vibrate faster, so more and more information is fed to you from the higher planes. It's a graduation exercise that most of us are either going to go through or we're going to flunk. This is not time that I wish to flunk.
Of course not, no. And, Monatomic Gold, being also called white gold, is this something that also helps elevate the mind to communicate with the universe around you?
Yes, there are many types of the monatomic gold. In fact, there are some 22 kinds of monatomic gold. I only carry about 8, simply because I was stocking up on this, which cost me money, and they were not selling. So, the audience, unfortunately, the people that buy through the Message Center are on that vibration, so I get what they have. Now, our members, we use a gamut of them, but I'm not going to stock all of them. I don't have a millionaire backing me, by the way, so I can't put $40,000 into something and then stock up on it. I have to go with what is a circulatory that I can sell, and we buy through that one. I'm a more mundane thing on that one. But the kind of gold that you can get a gold powder, which is strictly for psychic ability. It works with the Shirshashara, as they call it again. It works with the crown chakra. It works with the pineal pituitary complex. It works there to help you to do psychic things, to dream in color, to remote view, to astral project. That's all it does. It does nothing for the physical. It works on the metaphysical or psychic bottom. There is a gold capsule that actually goes to the digestive system, working on the lower body, the lower brain, by the way, too, and that's another thing we get into in my studies of metaphysics. And then it works to keep those bodies there working on that plane. And then we have, as I say, the life source super sprout, and that gives you all of your chlorella, spirulina, barley grass, the green things. And, of course, chlorophyll, by the way, is a thing that plants produce. Melanin is the thing that some people produce. And melanin is nothing but plant chlorophyll being more or less registered to the hypothalamus and what they call the pineal gland. So the more you can take in those green things, the better off you can produce a better grade of melanin or vibrate on a plane that you would call more psychic and spiritual. So everything works for everything. Everything is coincided. It's just a matter of understanding what the Creator is trying to teach versus what these individual dragons try to teach to hold the progress of mankind, to hold the progress of human, and to hold back the process of womb and man. And man and womb. And I think that there are 3 different species living here, which we interface with and don't even realize it.
We're just simply out of frequency with them, right?
It's my understanding. Everything has a frequency, and everything has a frequency barrier. There's no such thing as a barrier. It's a matter, can you assimilate to that frequency and still do what you can do on lower frequencies? The higher the Godhead in you, the more spiritual, the more you can go to higher dimensions.
Interesting. You mentioned before about... you made a reference to people dreaming in color. What's your view on people who dream in color all the time on a normal basis?
That they are aware of their soul self, that they are aware they usually can come out of their bodies, they usually can astral project, or if not, they are used to going within. You know, they have what they call this rapid eye movement, this REM state, but there's a state that you can get into without REM. People, you know, you'll hear people say, and I hear especially women say this to me, they'll say, oh, girl, your mind's a million miles away. Or, gee, where are you? And they'll get it. So it sure was. I said, think about what you just said. What do you mean, what did I just say? Think about what you just said. You said, girl, your mind's a million miles away. And the person agreed with you. You used to know what faster than light, the 180,000 miles a second, mind. Mind is instantaneously. That's why when we understand dimensions of mind, we can now understand how the Creator can come into existence, because we're in somebody's mind, we're in somebody's little cell of liver. I call it nothing but mitochondria. People don't like to be called that. I think we're all mitochondria, and some of the cells are going bad. So we better get ourselves together. You know, I like to make nuances and jokes about things because learning to me is fun. But what I try to do is to take the things we go through on a regular basis and make sense out of them, or rather than just saying the things we don't want to deal with don't exist or so. To do that is to lie to self. And if you lie to self, you lie to anybody. And I'm not here for lying purposes. I'm not here for deception purposes. I'm here to learn. And once you decide that, you will learn. Sometimes the hard way, but you'll learn.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? As far as getting the audience going, you know, I can say, yeah, you're wonderful at that, because a recent lecture of yours I saw, you were talking about the different types of pyramids, and the way you were systematically breaking down the stupidity of the way things are academically taught. You had the audience laughing. It was hysterical. And and I know you were talking about how it was impossible to design the pyramids in the way that the academics often describe it there. I was wondering, in your studies with what you refer to as pyramid power, the term pyramid power, what is it that you're really referring to when you say that?
Well, it's interesting. The word pyramid comes from the Greek, what they call pyramus. And it was the Greeks who began to find these obelisks and things like this. And to them, it meant like a rotisserie. Like you had a rotisserie that was spinning around, I guess, with carrots on it and meat on it and something like this. And it meant that went straight up, pyramus, that goes to the point. And what is happening is that pyramids are all over our planet. Some are just recently being rediscovered. I understand that down in Texas that there is a wall that was found some time ago. This wall was 4,000 feet deep, and you couldn't even find it until you went down almost 500 feet because it had been covered over with topsoil. And there,
oh, wow.
You know, if you remember they talk about the plain of jars. Well, the plain of jars is over, I forget where it is, in parts of Java or something like this, where there are just big, giant jars all over the ground. They don't know how they got there. And these jars are big enough for monsters or tall people to hold. It's a plain of jars. Well, supposedly there were giants, and that they found this wall goes, it doesn't have an unnatural barrier. It runs through Texas, it goes down into Mexico, it goes down into South America. In other words, we did not have a Mexico and a United States and a Canada. Whatever this was, these were when giants roamed the earth, and there's all reports about them. And they have these jars that are still left over. They found cyclops skulls. They found skulls that are elongated. They found giant skulls. They found giant femurs and femurs. We don't begin to understand history on this planet. We've gone through so much now that the naive ones are back, the ones that are trying to get their karma straight are back, and they're all being misled through a system, of course, which is not historical at all, so that they will not find out the very purpose for coming back here, to learn truth, to live that truth in one cycle of incarnation so you can break that cycle of that. Instead, they want you captured up with this foolishness that they teach for history, this foolishness that they teach for astronomy, this foolishness that they teach for most of the basic sciences. And when people move past that, like Tesla, like persons like that, they tell you, oh, they're out the box, or they're so different again, per se. That's to hold you back from progress. If you want progress, go within. And remember, when you used to have big decisions, they told you to do a certain phrase. They said, sleep on it. People don't even understand what that means. When you had a big decision to make, you slept on it. That meant you wait till you went to sleep. You directed your prayers or your thoughts to guardians and higher consciousness, and you let the thoughts come through to you. You gave it to a higher source. Now we don't even understand what sleep on it means. We take a drug on it, we get high on it, lie to ourselves about it, and then let somebody lead us. That's a very dangerous situation to take at this particular time. It is not toward progress.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew my grandmother and my mother used that phrase, and in my family we always knew what that was like or what it meant, because my grandmother and my mother had very powerful psychic abilities. So we knew what they were talking about when they said sleep on it, and there was no doubt about that. The thing about I found remarkable was that you were breaking down the difference between like the Giza pyramids, the ziggurats. I don't know if you got into the Shensi pyramids on the lecture I was talking about, but you also brought up something equally astounding, was that there are these tremendous blue pyramids, one in the ocean, one at the North Pole. Could you expound on that, on what those are about?
Yes, again, hope your audience will stay with me on this one. There's a blue pyramid approximately 222 miles off the coast of Oregon, or out there, what we call the Pacific Ocean. It was not built by anybody that I know of. And you know, back in the 1900s when they had this cable that they drew over the ocean so you could get communication between Europe and Africa and so on, places like this again. Well, this thing was not built by anybody that I know that is now called human. It's out there, and they're utilizing it. They're bouncing signals off of it again. They didn't build it. They're using it. So who did build it? And why is it now still active? And if it's still active, why don't they tell people about it? Yes, there's one up in Canada. they've given some kind of they've had a, if you remember, I have a memory that's usually like a steel trap. I record these kind of things and I file them away until it's time to call them out. But I guess this was about 1998 or 7, it wasn't that long ago. They had a post out there up in Antarctica, or down in Antarctica, where supposedly they had some scientists, and suddenly they had to go and rescue these scientists. Whatever was happening, they brought them back. They even had to modify some kind of helicopter so it wouldn't freeze up. They brought them back to some kind of a hospital in Philadelphia or something, and then you never heard anything more about them. And I don't know if you remember that or not, but there was a big to-do about that. And what it was supposed to be up there, not the Salton Sea, what did they call that ocean up there? Wow, it'll come back to me. But right now there's an ocean that they found up there, and either they found some kind of life form in it, or they began to find some kind of writings that talked about the inner Earth, and that this was one of the lakes, the Vostok Sea. That was it, the Vostok.
Ah, okay.
Go back on that one. Look it up. It's still there. And they didn't say anything more about it. They hid that, and they don't even tell you some of the creatures that may have been in this Vostok Sea, which is, to me, it means it's some of the inner Earth oceans. And if you go far enough north or south, here we go again now. You get into the inner Earth, and that's another whole story which I thoroughly believe in, having read Bird's things, having read Dorpa, having read many of these people that talked about in Spitsbergen and stuff. And in fact, if you remember when Byrd, not Perry now, the Englishman, but when Byrd went there, Admiral Byrd, he flew, I think it was 2,300 miles into the Antarctic and 1,800 miles into the Arctic. Well, if you go either way, you'll get into areas and lands that you know, Spitsbergen or Sweden or something. You go into areas that you know about. There's no way you can go that deeply and find vegetation and supposedly life forms that are tropical. This means, again, that either he lied or they flew enough inside the Earth where they could understand that there is a division on Earth, and that one of the old names for Earth was Terra, so that you had Terra and you had interterrestrials, that you had surface people or terrestrials, and then you had people who lived in the sky called extraterrestrials. Again, when you begin to study metaphysics, when you study any of these ancient texts, they all tell you about it. It's this new discrepancy in those who would hold you back from learning that tell you that's foolishness. Then they go out and study the foolishness that they don't want you to know anything about.
Interesting. Yeah, and I was just looking on the, as we were talking, looking on the internet here about the Vostok Sea and seeing what I could find about that there. But I think I do remember that story coming out there. So they found something there, and they're obviously afraid to talk about it.
There you go.
And yes, and I've heard a lot about the hollow earth or the inner earth, and Admiral Byrd's story about being confronted by a tribunal up there at the North Pole, or possibly Antarctic. It goes both ways. And having all of his planes and guns being taken away from him by this inner earth tribunal of beings, and basically sent them marching back home with nothing other than their lives. And I guess this was at the time of Eisenhower's administration, if I remember correctly, and they were given a message to deliver to President Eisenhower, and it was simply this, you don't belong here, and if you come back again, we'll come and wipe the floor up with your entire country.
That's quite interpretation, but I do know it was Eisenhower that said, beware the, not the trilateral commission, beware the, what they called it, the, in other words, he was saying that these cabals of people who work with the government, who work with the military, the industrial complex. Here we go. And now, if you remember just recently, Monsanto now runs the United States Senate and government, okay? Senate and House.
Yeah.
Because what did they do? They wrote a thing that they wanted enacted, and the House and the Senate, both the Congress, and you used to tell me it was legislative, judicial, and executive, whatever it was, they passed it word for word. And when I understand from the paper, that word for word meant that it means that Monsanto now rules the earth. Because if you go against Monsanto and you cannot prove your claim, you will not only be tried but jailed, and then you can't even make claims against them, and then you cannot refuse to not use their product. And they came out with the Terminator seed. when they used Roundup and Gaucho and they had these beehive collapse and all. Now they have the Terminator seed that you don't have a choice of seeds. You have to use the Terminator seeds. Now you tell me what kind of a ruling force allows a chemical company, which has been to the detriment of everybody when you see all the lawsuits that they've gotten and so on and so forth, to tell them what to write into law, and they don't change a word of it, and people now accept this. That tells you the state of consciousness we are not in and the state of consciousness we should be in.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate there, because what's going on with Monsanto is horrendous. And it's as if they're doing it intentionally to change the biological makeup and the frequency of the human being to dumb us down and create a more docile race.
Well, and then not only that, too, if you notice now, there's a rise in homosexuality. I'm not going to pass judgment on whether homosexuality should or should not be. I'll let the individual do that. But what is very interesting is if that practice were continued, look at the logical conclusion of it. 2 men cannot make a baby. 2 women cannot make a baby. It takes the heterosexual union, so that means now that if the female has a womb, then the only one that can carry a baby, whether it be the term or not, would be the female. By the way, the word feminine means one minus faith. Look it up, femini. Now, it means now that if this practice is to continue, it means that the only way that anyone could carry in their womb that they'd have to get in vitro insemination. And if you remember, there was a big joke that's not funny again. About 2 months ago, they solicited somebody off of the Internet. This guy signed a contract with them, donated his sperm, per se, and then these 2 lesbians got married. And once they were married, again, they broke up. Once they broke up, the child, which was carried to term, then they wanted him to pay for the child. So there was a big lawsuit about who should pay. You know, I'm saying, look at this mess. This is what you call idiocy. What this will do, it means that now the women will go to either a sperm bank designated by the government, like Monsanto. They don't know what the heck they're getting. And I've been told metaphysically that some of them get alien implants. And then these implants are taken out during their first trimester, usually the first 30 days because they develop fast. Then they're told that they lost their child and then their minds are blank, or so on and so forth. You carry on that practice for 2 generations, you will have no species because the species will be either an alien one because you cannot reproduce yourself. This is where that's leading. And they're spraying things in the air that are cutting back on the male sperm. It's under attack. These pyramid power, when it's used in a verse again and using these metals, barium and aluminum and titanium, they cut off the male sperm. This is an attack on the civilization that we now understand it, on the species that we call man and womb man.
Interesting there. The term woman. I've often in my own travels found it in ancient history to be a reference to the wounded man, so to speak. Is that would you say that's a fair assessment, or have you come across something different?
Well, I would say womb man and man and womb man. These are species that are different from human and mankind. These are a whole different 3 things. And if you get back to some of the biblical references, as I say, I got into that at one time. If I can go back and quote, what did they say? And it said, and it came to pass that the sons of God for the daughters of man, and they were fair, and they went unto them, and they went into them, and of them were born mighty men. And there were giants in the earth. And it goes on to explain this whole terminology. That's repeated in the Al-Quran. That's repeated in the Popol Vuh. That's repeated in the Bhagavad Gita as it is in the Book of Truths. So obviously this must have been a time when these giants, and as I say, they found relics of these giants now, did come from space. And they refer to them now as the what do they call these Anunnaki. Well, Anunnaki only means those that came from or fell from the sky. But it doesn't talk specifically about the giant Anunnaki and so on like that, because our history has been distorted, mistaught, or not taught at all. This is why I say again, until you get into the study of metaphysics, you cannot understand anything on this planet in any way. And until you get the study of other languages and the history of other things other than the mundane things we're taught, you can't understand anything.
Yes, and I love linguistics and etymology myself. I've often said that, to understand where words come from is a huge liberating factor there, because then you're not entrapped by those words anymore, and you can break away from them there. But
sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead there. Yes.
No, that was weird. I didn't mean to do that. You got my mind triggered now. It's wide open. When you go into the area where the Great Pyramid is, which they say is in Egypt, and they say it is in the city of Cairo. If you will research that, you'll find that the Greeks could not say could not say K. They did not use it. K was one of the hieroglyphic of a standing crane, and when they broke it down into singularity in cursive. But anyway, when you look into that, you'll find that Cairo was spelled Kahir and pronounced with a K, not a C. Kahir means Mars, and that simply means that the city of Cairo was either a Martian settlement, where you find on Mars a pyramid structure similar to what we have, or it was changed around purposely so people would not be able to trace it back. So many things are right there for us to see. We will not see because we're too blind to see, and we're mistaught and told to accept what is there and do not do research. If you don't do research on your own, you'll always be ignorant on this planet, because the truth comes hard, because the lies are what keeps you under control.
Yes, and it's amazing because I've often followed the work done by George Haas and William Saunders with the Sidonia Codex, and also the work that's been done in conjunction with Mesoamerica and the Martian Codex and the five-sided pyramid up there. And it's astounding how the geoglyphs up there relate to the civilizations, ancient civilizations here on Earth. So there is a definite ancient connection there between the two. But it's often been proposed as well that the first geoglyph ever found, the one that's infamously known as the face on Mars, is a direct reference to the Sphinx here on Earth. Probably not in its current form, but what it used to look like. And actually, that brings up another thing too. What's your take on the Sphinx? Do you feel it was in another form in an earlier incarnation and was changed?
I think that I was a history professor, and I used to ask some of the students there again on what desert was the Great Pyramid of Giza built. And of course, most intelligent, you're going to say Sahara, but that's wrong. It was right on the Libyan desert. What has happened is that the Libyan has now enroached with the Sahara because there was a great battle that was fought up there again, and they messed up the land there. That land where the pyramid, where the Sphinx. The Sphinx was built before the pyramid. And the area where the Sphinx was is still watermarked. They say it's because of rain. There's no rain that was at. That was a very fertile delta there, and there was a stream that ran out to the Nile. And in fact, when they made this terrible thing and they used this instrument, it reversed the flow of the Nile. The Nile flows backward now because they use lenses, they use crystals, and they used a black crystal. And that's another story I'm not going to get too much into. I use that for those who are really advanced and can understand what may have happened here. But when they use this, they took the fertile soil, which is black, they took the melanin out of it, and they made white sand. That sand there is still radioactive. And if you read about the Dogons and those who journeyed all the way from the Salton Sea all the way down to Mali trying to escape that great tragedy, they'll tell you about the story and how the fish people, Oenes and the rest of them, came and helped them and told them to not do this again. And it was the use of the black crystal, as it should not be used in the form of a pyramid. Anything shaped like a pyramid works better in this system and especially on this planet. But when you misuse it, and you put that they took away. You took away the Eye of Horus, and you put up the black crystal. That's when they fought a great battle there. That's when they made a lot of destruction, and that's when they formed these deserts. These deserts are soil that has the melanin taken out, and they're now radioactive. They're worth nothing. Nothing can grow on them, and it's still you can still type the isotopes of radiation within them.
Is this why in that region there's the sand has been fused together as if in a mighty blast of heat?
I think so. This is where they misused it. And, of course, they did the same thing when it happened to Mars, and that was with the ancient story of Marduk and Malona. There's something else that they refuse to teach anymore. And, again, and as I say, that was, well, I'm just saying again, as long as we're under control, and that control is being wrested, then we're going to have to awaken to new consciousness. We're going to have to go through those old stories and review them and see if these stories made more sense than the lies that we're telling now, for truths on what actually we're going about. This is a time for awakening. And if you want to awaken, there's literature, there's meditation, there's monatomic gold that is still there. But if we're going to stay dumbed down, comatose, brainwashed, inoculated, vaccinated, and encrypted, we'll continue to teach the same mundane foolishness and repeat the same journey again. I intend not to make this journey here again. I'm definitely not under the draconic control.
Oh, definitely not. You know, I've always found this what's amazing, and anyone with half a brain could see this, is that whole geographical area cutting across you know, the Middle East into North Africa, and straight across North Africa, starting from what I surmise to be the Dead Sea, it fans out from there to the west, as if from some type of radioactive fallout, let's say a neutron bomb or something like that. Tends to coincide with those old, you know, mythological stories about two infamous cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, being wiped out, you know, and someone being turned into a salt lick. I find it interesting that history repeats itself for those who don't learn from it, and I often point out that what was referred to as Sodom and Gomorrah ends up becoming Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Well, that's interesting, too, although Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt and so forth is interesting, too. But I go back to not just Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but I go back where they first practiced this here. It's down in Texas. It's another Alamogordo, and places where they were trying to test these things out. But it also brings to mind the story of the Dogons. And I call them Dogons. They say Dogons. I think they were called Dogons. And if you remember, they left the area there and they migrated as far as they could down to Mali into the caves there because they were fleeing from this pestilence and things that had caused a messing up. And, of course, this is in Africa, and, of course, Africa is not a real name because that was not the name of this place. That's why if you research Africa, you can't go back anywhere. That was named after the 10th Pope for Leo Africanus. But when these Dogons got down there, it was said that a Nomo in the form of Oannes, which means a fish people, and Oannes was one of the leaders of the Nomo that came and helped them and told them that they were fleeing from a civilization that had messed the earth up before, and that they should be complimented and they should follow their own intellect as well as own spiritual self. And so they told them they would be going to the dogs. Many people call that serious. It's not serious. The dogs are the Canis Major and Canis Minor, the dog stars. And they said it's going back to the dogs, and this is why they were going. This is why they call them doggons. You see, every time you get to a truth, they'll twist the truth just enough to make you believe it's not the truth, and then tell you a lie which you accept. This is a time for people to go into meditation and find within. Ask questions of self and expect answers, but don't expect the answers to be truthful for those who are dominating and ruling you.
Yeah, it's interesting you should bring up the Dogon. They've always been a fascinating tribe of people. I remember as a kid, the first time I ever learned about them was from the original TV series In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, and he spoke about them. And the fascinating thing was their headdresses, their headgear, and their ritual wear was like that of an astronaut. It was not something, it wasn't tribal per se. There was something too technical about the type of stuff they were wearing. You couldn't just pass it off as tribal. There was definitely something cosmological about it. I don't know if you've agree with that, or if you have a different take on that. But even as a kid, I remember that. It's like, wow, it looks like they're wearing an astronaut's helmet.
Well, and you have many mosques and you have many headdresses, again, that refer to that same type of thing. And I think back, too, there's a couple of things you said I want to make a note on when I want to go back to that, too. There's an interesting parable here, if you would, about Sirius B. The Dogons also knew about Sirius B, Sirius A, and Sirius C. And there's debate about Sirius C. how could they know about a constellation that had triple suns? How could they know this? They had no telescope. Lewis wasn't born at that particular time, other than the fact that we're an old species here, that this earth is very old, that we've lost and dumbed down more than we'll ever learn again, and that they were simply going back to the ancient histories which is being revived. That's why they used to sing these songs which would carry back the keys to some of these things, because they didn't have books to the extent. They used it in their minds, and they sang these songs, and these songs reminded them of some of the truths of the past. I simply say again, we don't begin to understand the age of this planet, nor the domination that's been done, but the beautiful thing is we're about to become free, if we can raise our consciousness and not go backwards again at this time. To go backwards at this time is almost a sin, and I sincerely hope that your audience and people who are seeking truth will try to go within and not accept everything said by these so-called scientists who are very, very mortal and very, very dumbed down, comatose, brainwashed, and inoculated, and make you think that you're the one that's out of step. They're the ones that don't want you to know the step, and they lost their lockstep a long time ago.
Oh yeah, it's there used to be a time when the scientific exploration was seen as an adventure, as it should have been, and then along the way it became organized, and it became bought and paid for, and became basically the byproduct of a corporate agenda. Ever since NASA has been an extension of the Air Force, there's been no truth or honesty out of the scientific community at all. Much less the archaeological community, which has its own reasons for lying, but which you and I both know about. But the thing about, and definitely people listening to this show are definitely into this, but in terms of the awakening and growing up and going through these growing pains, what about, let's say, the average person who doesn't make it past that graduation stage? What happens with them?
Well, there's something that you said 3 times, and I'm only sensitive to it. That's why I heard it being said again. You used the word kid. There are no such thing as kids. A kid is a baby goat, and a kid is therefore a sacrifice to the goat god Baphomet. And you'll find that symbol being used in many of the religions now. You'll find the goat symbol being flashed by people in government. You'll find it being flashed by people in some of these churches that are controlled. Kid is a baby goat. You do not, earth people, a womb man cannot give birth to a kid, okay? But she can make a sacrifice of her child to the kid and the goat god Baphomet. This is why they even introduced the word kid now. You have kid being used more than children. A woman cannot birth a kid. Well, I'll take that back. They can put anything in the womb now, and the womb is big enough and they remove it in time enough. But they genetically have modified things, and that's a term that means that you're ready to sacrifice your child to the kid and to the goat god Baphomet. And they even show those little horned fights, and you get, as I said, that's just one of those things that I always notice, because I see that word being used so much now. More than that, in answer to your first query and what you also said, yes, I agree with you, that this is the time for an awakening. This is the time when everything must be shown for what it is, so that we will have clear choices. And this is the time when some people refuse to make clear choices because they are afraid. But this is another time when people are waking up. And as you started off asking way at the beginning of our conversation, I thank you again for inviting me to your show today, and that was about the metals that are up there again, and about the chemtrails in the first place. The secondary use of the chemtrails is not only to control and modify weather, they call it weather modification, but to be able to control and modify species. Because, as I say, this barium, which forms like silk, it looks like spider webs and stuff when it floats down. That barium forms streams of metal that can cause all kind of emphysema, sinus trouble, asthma, anything where that metal gets into the mucous membrane, it irritates it, it causes prolific growths of bacteria, and this is where we get that dis-ease or imbalance. So that's another thing that they're doing. By spraying that, they're also killing off male sperm, they're controlling species, and they're causing all kind of mucus problems again because we have to breathe, or at least most of us feel we have to breathe. So that's another thing that they're doing. it's a planet under control that's about to break away, and I just hope that enough of audiences like yours, hopefully mine that you've shared some of yours, will begin to kind of do for self and use some of these things that are now prolific that you can get, which will help you to ascend from this stuff and keep you more healthy than this stuff that they're telling you to buy every day for food, which is not food at all. It has no nourishment in it whatsoever.
Interesting, yeah. People have got to get that stuff out of their diet there. It's no good for them at all. But, I mean, is there, do you feel, actually, let me put it this way. I had come across some information about the atomic structure of the Earth itself, and that at the time of the this is something I wanted to cross-reference with you. At the time of what was I thinking? There was a certain time in ancient history, possibly coinciding with the time of the Great Flood, although there have been many of those, that the reason that there were so many changes that took place was that there was a breakdown in the barrier between, let's say, Earth 1 and Earth 2. All of a sudden, their frequencies were visible to each other. And there was for lack of a better term, in the orbit, since they both had the same orbit, these two Earths collided with each other. And by the time the Great Flood is finished, you hear these, mythological stories about, in the end of it all, this is the reason why you needed to keep a sample of animals to repopulate the planet. But when all was said and done, there was these other race of beings that didn't come from Earth 1, they came from Earth 2. And this is where you get the story of giants, all of a sudden appearing out of nowhere after the flood was diminished. And that since then, this has created, and supposedly this has been discussed in the scientific community as well and proven, that at the atomic level of our planet, there are two different, how should I say it, two different atomic structures fused together with each other, knowing full well that one doesn't belong here. And that supposedly in this so-called Great Awakening that will take place that you and I know of, this is where one of the reasons for people needing to prepare themselves, because there are some people that just simply won't be here anymore when the Earth, or Earths plural, correct themselves and split apart again. Have you come across anything like that in your studies?
Yes, I have, but I chose not to accept that one. I chose instead another one. And again, okay. I will share that one with you. And then I'll ask you the same question, which do you prefer, or are both there in a modulated form? I was talking about the story of Maldek and Malona, that there were systems of 12, that there were 12 planet systems, again, per se, not 9 as we've been told, and so on and so forth. But at any rate, the story of Maldek and Malona supposedly is that Maldek had a moon was called Malona, that there were races of people on both of that, and they had a battle. They'd been feuding for some times, and they actually extended to break the vortex field, or the electromagnetic field, between the two of them, and they both disintegrated. And that when they disintegrated, there were people, great scientists and so on some of the inner planets, and especially the Martians were very well versed, who it was prophesied that this may happen, and since that many of the Martians then went off to Sirius and other places, but that Maldek and Malona then streamed through, affecting both the outer planets and the inner planets. And that a lot of the flood story is when this last flood from the moon Malona came down in here, that the Earth did not have salt water, that the Earth had only fresh water, but that everywhere you have salt water, you have a product that came from the moon Malona, and and the disintegrated forms that came here. And this is why you had many voracious things who are now living in salt water, with the more passive things who are in the more or less the non-salt water, or what they would call, again, the fresh water which Earth had. and that when this happened, it also caused a lot of things that happened. Period. With Mars, supposedly, it almost sheared off the top of Mars. It broke the bond of Mars, and the Martian scientists who thought that this may happen had to put up 2 orbiting satellites, one in grade, one in retrograde, Phobos and Deimos, which supposedly panic and fear, which the Martians were in. Some of the Martians left, some of the Martians incarnated here, and some of the Martians supposedly still live within Mars itself, and they don't want you to know this again. So that's the way I understood it. And then the same type of a structure, it was almost like the Death Star that you hear about in Star Wars and stuff, approached the Earth. That Earth at one time had no moon. And the same structure up there now is an artificial structure. That gets into another whole story again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
This time, the Martians who came here fought them to a standstill and scuttled that ship so it could not take off again. And then there was a great big battle about the moon men and so. I know that there's a story now, and you've probably seen it. I don't know what you think of the pictures and stuff, about a 1 billion year-old spaceship up on Mars now that supposedly had pilots in it, and it was a mile long, and that is actually, the pilot up there was a female negroid-looking woman, and the second one they found about 3 months later in another part of the ship was another negroid-looking woman who had been decapitated, and that the preservation thing that they used there was so great. You have to get the film. I'm sure you have it. If not, I'll share it with you. You judge for yourself. But that's the story of the ancient moon. And the battle that the moon people had to fight with the people that were here, which later on became Lemuria, and with that one, it even broke up Lemuria as a result of that, and all of these things. So that's the way I understand it. Now, again, which one is true, both true, neither true, I don't know. But that's another speculative, we can throw that into the symposium also.
Yeah, definitely. And I would love to see that film as well, Dr. Blair, if you could get that to me. I'd definitely share it. I'd be very interested. I've come across only a portion of that story, not the way you've explained it, but thank you for sharing it. That's pretty amazing there, and but it resonates. There's something about it that sounds familiar, like it's not completely off base. Well, that's let's see here. I know you. In previous lectures, I know you've talked about what the Great Pyramid really is in comparison to our academic beliefs. In the way you systematically, and it's brilliant the way you do it, the way you systematically dismantle the academic explanations, where does that leave you with how the pyramids came into existence?
Pyramids are seemingly on every planet. They always say there's nothing new under a sun. Pyramid is the best power to take the frequencies of CMEs and the things that come from the sun and utilize it. Because, all right, I got to go with this one too. I am a thorough believer now of a hollow earth. I am a thorough believer now inventing areas on a planet which we call the poles. I'm a thorough believer of an inner sun, the proton, or if this is nothing but a cell, and that's all I think it is, and I think we're mitochondria, then there must be an electron and a proton to it, and the proton would be what we call the inner sun. And the best way of utilizing the inner vibrations and coupling them with the outer vibration is a pyramid shape. So anytime you use that shape, everything is amplified. Pyramid power produces, up to the 6th power, if you would. So this is why I believe it was built. I still believe that it was also used for what they call the Merkaba. That the Mer, which is another name for water or flow of energy, and the Ka and the Ba is the spirit and the soul, that the Merkaba is how higher advanced people travel. They don't use any kind of ships. They combine their energies into one soul matrix, and they use the Merkaba for travel. Once they get to a place, the pyramid shape is one of the better ones to begin to reorganize and to utilize it. And, of course, it's one of the best things for anybody with melanin because it reactivates the pineal gland, which lets then whatever kind of a body you're going to accept begin to work on a higher frequency. So that's the way I look at it.
Interesting, yeah. And so since that basically answers it there, because if it's, on every planet out there, for the sake of balancing it out, then that leads me to think that there are races out there in the galactic community that actually come to the planets and build them for the purpose of balancing out the planet's frequency there. In your studies, have you found that what we see above ground with pyramids is almost like seeing just, the tip of an iceberg? Is it also, what's the term I'm thinking of? Inverted. Is there an inverted one going into the ground as well?
Well, I believe in so above, so below. And Andre Hawassa, I think, out there, the Egyptian, the curator out there who used to, he didn't want anything that wasn't done by the Egyptian. It hadn't been done in the last 2,000 years, which, of course,
Right.
that's the way he wanted because he was being protective. But actually, there are pyramids all over the place. As you know, they're discovering, in fact, they're not only pyramids all over the place, but there are these Stonehenge-type devices which seem to be relays or things that can be activated. They can use this magnetic energy force and couple it with what they call vril. That's another thing, too. You used to talk about the power in vril. I think that the power is unlimited. The only limit to power is the limitless of a people without souls. And the misuse of power is the misuse of what they would call pyramid energy, pyramid power, the energy that comes from the Creator. Everything is mind. And they say if you put your mind to it, I use this again. When you put your mind to it, combined mind is creating. And this is how architecture works. You create in your mind, then you put it down on blueprints and paper. There ought to be a sphere where mind is enough. You don't have to put it down to using principles of metals and stuff like this and other lower atomic structure. You just live in a mind world, much as the Matrix tried to show before the Walensky brothers made it into a martial arts movie. Mind, right. Everything. And mindless means that you have no soul because you've lost the mind capacity to carry the soul. So other than that, that's for a certain race of species. It doesn't mean it's for everybody. And there are very intelligent creatures out here in this world. Our planet has been like a halfway station. It's been like a log-in, log-out station. It's almost like you come here to do time for penance. I do. I think it's, what's this guy, Alex Brown calls it prison planet. I believe it's a zoo. Everything is here. They make anything they want. In Dulce, New Mexico, every day they're making creatures. They're crossing DNA with things that never be messed up. But Earth is a harsh teacher. But if you can make a sojourn through Earth, you're now fit to be a god. Because now you've learned humbleness. you've learned, I don't know. This is a heck of a penance place. That's all I got to say. And nothing they teach you here is a fact. Everything here is a matter of where you are in vibration. What can you take and understand and comprehend versus what can you just be knowledgeable about without an understanding?
Oh yeah, in reference to what you're saying, it's funny because someone, I can't remember who, once referred to alien contact as the aliens come here to see the animals at the zoo because that's how interesting we are. So
that's what I call it. That's one of my terms. I call it a zoo. And now that the animals' cages are unlocked, the shackles are taken off, they still lock themselves up every night because when they get to the barrier out there and they're about to jump over the fence, they're afraid of what they might find, so they crawl back into the cages. There are those who are going to crawl back into the cages and those who are going to ascend in consciousness that they no longer feel that they were imposed upon to have it done in the first place. Then there are others who want to continue the practice of being an armed guard, and if you're going to guard somebody in a prison, that means you're going to be a prison guard and you're not going to be able to ascend yourself. I think it's a matter of choices now. Each of us are driven by a higher voice and a higher consciousness toward those choices. That's why we select our food, our reading material, our thoughts, and everything that we do selectively because we're now taking control. The rest of us wait for Monsanto, the government, and all these things to choose for us. And if you let them choose for you, you're in bad shape because they will serve their Dogon gods who will literally eat you up or literally take your ascension factor away.
Interesting. You referenced the hollow earth before, which I've been an advocate of for many years. I only first learned about it, I think in 2001, I think around there. So it was about 12 years ago I first was educated on it. And since then I've been paying attention to anything I can. But in conjunction with our discussion on pyramid power and pyramids all over the planet, how do the two, if they do at all, how do they interact with each other? Hollow Earth, pyramids, and on top of that, have you seen any current activity taking place with the pyramids worldwide?
Oh yeah, I haven't been in Egypt in a little while. The people that have gone over there, when they went over there, began to hear when they were first over there, say their first 3 days, like a thumping. They call it urine and a thumping, and kind of a boom, boom, or a vibration they could feel during those first 4 days. And many of them said it kept them up at night. Well, metaphysics, here we go again, and the collectives that speak that, and these societies that will share knowledge, they say that these pyramids are becoming active again. Because this new sun energy, which is an awakening energy, is awakening these long dormant energy units within the earth itself. And certain things will be rolled back, certain things will be made open and clear. And the auspice of that, of course, were these crop circles, which simply show, obviously they're put by very high intelligence, to show you the leaking spears, to show you the mathematics behind how these things work, and the geometric designs and so on again like that. This is why I also think that you see so much now talking about transformers and metal creatures and all these things, because these dracons cannot make biological, so they must make nanological. They must use things that are mechanically done because they don't have souls. So what we would call microbiology and spears that grow up into cells and cells that go out and that, they have to use nanotechnology. And like I say, I feel that next year you're going to hear about alto technology and pico technology, and more subatomic forms of metals and material things, rather than using the microbiology, which leads into very evanescent things of the mind and worlds of the mind, where you can create as you want to. So I think it's a matter of choice now. Do we follow the old mundane, materialistic things, using not only just pyramid power, but using all kind of structures, or do we get into the point where we come, the mind becomes the spirit, and the spirit is free to go wherever it wants to and can travel where it wants to for learning, much as we do anyway every night, but we just forget where we went to. So that's the way I look at it, not so much of a materialistic thing with certain mechanical means, but that the higher ascendancies don't need anything mechanical, because the mind creates wherever it wants, and therefore you are in the vibrational rate of your mind, where others like minds see the same thing. It's a matter of, do you believe in just physical, or do you believe in the metaphysical? Do you believe in just spiritual, or do you believe in the metaspiritual? Do you believe in mind, or do you believe in brain? I believe in universal mind and strive to make my mind control my body, whereas they want it just reverse.
You know what? It brings up another question, and maybe I'm I don't know, expecting too much by asking this, but with all of that going on now and over the past 10 years and even over the next couple of years, what takes place with us sociologically and economically, our economic system, and the idea that, you know, right now, I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out we live in a system of economic slavery, and as long as everything is profit motivated, there's always going to be this high-end, sinister, backdoor, white-collar crime against the human race. Even if in the next couple of years, the bad guys operating behind closed doors are not allowed to reincarnate here anymore and just simply can't come back, that still leaves a system of damage in place. What happens to that?
Well, that damage is being offended now. They're refusing. They are, what do they call? They're liquidating debts. 27 trillion bill out. I can't even imagine how much $27 trillion is. I can't even. My mind won't even brain won't even comprehend that. But they get $27 trillion, and yet they go back to mortgages, which through the Social Security system, you're free any place, and never should have done it in the first place. Fiat money, 1913, same thing, Jekyll and Hyde. So now all this is being revealed. So once this yoke is thrown off, none of that will matter because we'll use a bartering system or we use a system of mind. And we'll get those who do the best they can with what they do. Always let a person do what they do well, as long as what they do well doesn't hold you back from ascension. So everything is being revealed. Everything is being made clear. Sometimes we not like the clarity because it's frightening, but everything is being made clear. Look at this mess that's going on right over here now. Over there with the invasion that's going on. Here you have Israel, and you have Syria, and you have Russia, and you have China at each other's odds now, at each other's throats now. Why? For what? For greed? For prophecy? For propheticness? For what? How much money can you control at one time? How many cars can you drive at one time? How many people can you subjugate at one time without being subject to the subjugation? It's everything now. Everything now is being made clear. And once we take that pattern, I don't think we'll even have to go with that. There will be those who stay with the mundane old order, and there will be those who want to go with the new order of ascension. Not the new order under Hitler and all of that, and Wilhelm Reich and all that stuff, but under a different type of order. I think we're already choosing up who's going to stay with the high earth, who's going to be with the middle earth, and who's going to be left alone with these dracons who will be shaken off of earth. I think that decision we make each day by the things we do, the things we think, the things we eat, and the things we drink.
Interesting. And I guess a time will come where the things that we normally need on a daily basis, food, shelter, safety, those things, I guess, go away in the in the process of evolving or ascending. Is that correct?
I would think so. Had that old thing, was that used to that thing about the Wizard of Oz, which was a metaphor again, showing you the dope and showing you the drugs and showing the chemical companies and those that work people and the wicked witches of the east and west and north and south, all of these things. And of course, the remake of that, it had Michael Jackson and all was, the Wiz. And it showed again, we're always looking for a controller, because once we learned that we were not taught that we are so experiencing a reality which doesn't exist, so we understand and better understand what we are when we offer to it, we now take on the land mass of the concrete and the physical, the tin man, the straw man, the lion-hearted, and now we've induced not only a mind, which is free to choose any choice, but we get back to that same mundane structure because that's all we're taught. These banking systems are no good. We can see what they do. These systems are falling. By the way, too, I don't know when you'll play this again, but Jewel is now being taken over. A banking system became part of Cyprus. Cyprus just went through a big change. They got more people in Spain and in Greece now that are unemployed than you have employed. So how in the world now, where did they get this money from to take over the Jewel Corporation? Everything now is being released. Everything now will be made clear. The monetary system is gone, but the spiritual system must exist. So we'll have to learn to live on better foods. We'll have to learn to come together to help each other. We'll have to learn to get through so much race and gender and getting back to those who are able to go with a higher consciousness and can provide things that can let you live through this. And the biggest way to live through it is to change your mind so you can change your thinking, so you can get some help from the high advanced gods and not these draconic lizard gods that have been dominating us anyway, who nobody wants in the first place.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. I'm glad you stated that. Dr. Blair, are you currently working on any new projects?
Always working on some project, yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, this is what I always do. Would that I had these billion-dollar backers. I would need with a couple of million, and they'd make that back the first hour because you wouldn't need money. You begin to provide for people shelters and consciousnesses by which there'd be no diseases. You wouldn't have any chips. And once you do that, the planet can change faster and get rid of your mortal enemy. Yeah, that's always what I work on, but unfortunately I've never gotten a billion-dollar millionaire. I've never even got a millionaire to give me anything. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of projects that could be used now, using magnetism, using diodes. Oh, yes, definitely so. But to get it into the materialistic world, it still takes a little money into them.
Yes, definitely. I know. I wish I could find somebody to do it too. What about the book? I know I came across I think, at least 2 books of yours on Amazon there. You want to mention to the audience the books you published already?
Well, no, the only published works I had is when I was in school and I had to publish, and that's it's just not in that. I really don't have any. I have a little, I call it a book of prophecies, predictions, and probabilities, but no otherwise printed literature other than what I had to do to get out of school, and that was half thesisized because I was going to go before a review, committee of the church, not of the secularity. No, what I do have are products. What I do have are tapes. I have over 104 tapes where everything is broken down. All you got to do is listen to it. In fact, I have some people that are going to start to make a book out of 4 of my tapes. So since I have 104, I guess through having a ghostwriter, I can have maybe about 30 books, huh? But now a product you've never heard of. I have a product called BioStem, okay, in which you can help to get your cell-regenerating stem cells to proliferate faster. I have Carnivorin, which uses the Venus flytraps and eats up bad cells. It's the easiest way to get rid of cancer cells and so on like that. I have a product called beta-glucan with IP6 that's used into the yeast form of things, which help also in the form of natural immune builders. I have something called immune support, which has 29 different things in it, including reishi, shiitake, and maitake, and all kind of different gut. So what I've gotten into are things that can make your immune system sky high, things that can to reorganize themselves and make good cells and not bad cells, and things that can help your psychic ability, things that can help the pineal gland. Even in the diodes, we have a diode that is for, you can wear it around the neck. What they don't tell women is that they have the thyroid gland has 3 lobes on the thyroid gland of a woman. They don't tell them that. Therefore, they require more iodine, and they give them this artificial iodine, which makes the thing enlarge itself, okay? We have a crystal. It's a Brazilian crystal with some diode material in the tip of it. If you wear that around your neck, it will not only protect your thyroid, it will protect your thymus, which is your gland of youth. When it goes bad, you show age. It will protect the heart, and I think that's a functioning organ that we need. And it will protect the breast of a female, and most of these females are going out here getting 2 and 3 mammograms a year or so, where they actually compress the breast, radiate it with radiation, and the attendant runs out and uses a lead shield. They all use diodes, by the way. And then they wonder why they can get breast cancer. Then they're eating genetically modified foods. And, as I say, this is madness here. And once you can begin to awaken, there are many helps that you can reach for, but you have to first have the spiritual desire to reach for them by trying to go within and say, I should not be unhealthy, and there are ways I can be healthy. That way you'll get your help for healthiness.
Right. You know what, Dr. Blair, where can people find all your products and your tapes and so forth?
Oh, where that they either write to. We have an address, and we have a website, and we have a phone. A phone number, which is the easiest way, is 708-422-6685. That's 708-422-6685. We have a web address, of course, a World Wide Web, www.metacenter. That's Metaphysical Center. That's META and the word center. Then you have to push the number 2.com. The number 2 came about because there's a group in New York that stole my thing. I started mine in about 1967. They started that about 2003, and PayPal let them do that. So you have to make sure if you want to get to my site, you push the number 2. However, if you type in my name, you can find lots of things up there on me. But this website should be www.themetacenter2.com. Right now, I'm doing a telecom tomorrow, if anybody chooses to go up there tonight or whenever this is played back again and registers for it. And that's going to be things you better know, understand, to stay alive now. And it's going to be for your loved ones. It's going to talk about the things I've talked about, solutions to some of these problems, and things that you should be intaking into your system so that your body will not deteriorate and you won't wind up going to the hospital getting more pharmaceuticals and radiation. So that's it for that one. And, I hope that the audience will think enough of you to take enough of me to try out some of the things I have, because all I'm trying to do is to save lives, to help spiritual people to get free of this mess, and to wake people up. So toward that end, that's what I've sacrificed myself for. my wife for, my son for, everybody else that has stood with me. So now we either stand alone, but we better stand up for something.
Definitely there, folks. And folks, definitely make sure you go and check out that website there. Lots of excellent products. I've been looking at it myself for the past week, and it's definitely not something to miss out on. Dr. Blair, what I wanted to say is thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been absolutely fantastic talking with you and having you as a guest. And we definitely hope and want to have you back again on anything new you have coming up there, or just to have you back again as a guest anyway, regardless. And thank you very much again. It's been wonderful.
Well, Richard Smith, it has been my pleasure. I've heard a lot about you. It's mostly been good. And say this, oh yeah, you know, people always get you some bad. You got to. That's just the way human nature is, unfortunately. But most of the things I've read are good. You're a very honest person, and you are a seeker of truth and spirituality. Anybody that's like that, we're going to have to be brothers and sisters, because it's the only way this planet can go. And eventually, those are the kind of people that will get to the higher portions of this planet. So I thank you very much for the time you've given me. May the Creator continue to bless you and yours, and I hope it's not the last time that we share thoughts and we share things. And you know, I've got to end with one way. I have a poem that way out. It takes 35 seconds. Please, okay, Universal Creator, know in my heart that I love you. Please protect me and this planet on which I live now. Please open my mind, my spirit, and my soul to receive only truth and your love now. I have people all over the world saying that one. Hope you'll share it with me. And if that helps anybody else, that's what the first order you make from me. We enclose the Universal Creator's prayer. Thank you so much, Rich, and the Creator continue to bless you and yours.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, man, we got to do this again. 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 We got to do this again.